Good morning, my name is Cindy and I paint pretty things. On today's episode of Idle Chatter, I'm going to be talking about a huge, very universal question, which is how do I become a better artist? I'm going to be addressing this topic in very typical ways, but also I think perhaps some unexpected ways, so definitely listen until the end. Now, usually when people are talking about becoming a better artist, they usually mean it in a technical skill kind of way. They mean, how do I get good at this craft, at drawing, at painting, at whatever form it is? And I think that the key to improving is being more specific. So you want to get better. What does that mean? I think the first step is figuring out what better and what quote-unquote good means to you, because there are many very amazing art styles out there. So your art style that you think is peak art is going to be very different from someone else's. So if you're an artist who's like starting from square one, then I found that it's really important to find artists who you look up to, whose style is a style that you want to emulate. And this is by no means copying, this is inspiration. Every artist that has come has had an artist before them who really inspired them. For example, even the big, famous, classic names had mentors who taught and helped them. Even Michelangelo had a mentor, Bertoldi di Giovanni, who taught him sculpture. I'm not sure how common this thought is nowadays, but sometimes there's this misconception of I can't rely on other artists or other sources to inspire me because then it's not my original thought anymore. But I think what makes art so beautiful is that it is influenced and inspired by the things around them. What's making it unique is that it's being filtered through your filter, your viewpoint, and that's where the uniqueness can come from, and that's where innovation can come. And as a side note, on top of that as well, you don't really need to be shooting to be the next Michelangelo to be a successful artist. I think much more humble accomplishments are absolutely valid, and you can find happiness in those as well. So going back to my point, be more specific in your goals. So for me, for example, some years ago, I did a challenge called the 365 challenge. Pretty straightforward. You just draw every day for a year. Very intimidating, very difficult. And I actually did it twice. So the first time I did it, I kind of was in that space of, I just want to be better. I just need to draw. I just want to be better. So then every single day, I spent more time deciding what to draw than actually drawing. So when I did it the second time, I decided to, as they say, niche down and decide on a specific technical skill that I wanted to improve on. At that time, I wanted to get better at drawing recognizable faces. So that made my work a lot easier in that each day I just needed to pick a reference that I wanted to do for that day and I just needed to draw it. So that challenge went a lot smoother, and by the end of the year, I was definitely much better at drawing portraits. And having a more specific goal then felt way more satisfying, because when you have a set goal, there's a much clearer start and end. So that very first drawing I did versus the very last drawing I did, you could see clear improvement. Versus the first time I did the challenge, my first drawing that I did and the last drawing I did were just different styles, different mediums, not really comparable. So maybe you could see that I did improve, and I definitely did improve, but it was just harder to see that accomplishment. And so it felt a little less clear in how I had progressed. So if you're not quite sure yet what it is you want to improve on, which is exactly what happened to be the first time I did the 365 challenge, which in a way the challenge was useful because it helped me realize what it was I was interested in and what I did want to actually pursue, then maybe you just need to do some experimenting. Some people, for example, they really love line art, so your goal could be to improve on the dynamics and the weights of your line art to make it look more lively. Like For me, there was portraiture. You could shoot to have clear anatomy, and that could get even more specific where you're focusing on like specifically hands this week. And then the next week you're focusing on the arms and you're studying the muscles and different ways that the arm looks when it's bent or extended. When you get more specific like this, then you'll find that your studying becomes much better in quality. And so then there's much less kind of fumbling around. I think often artists just want to jump into it. Like, I just want to do it. I just want to be better. I just want to just do good. But when you put more planning and more thought into it, it does help lead you a lot better and save you a lot of headaches, frankly. And if you're in a position to know what career you're shooting for, then that makes it easier too, because you can look at the portfolios of people who are doing the job you want to do and see what it is that they excel at. For example, a concept artist often is very skilled in character design as well as environment design. So that means you're going to want to study up on character design, on body shape, on creating unique and identifiable silhouettes. With environments, you're going to want to build up your visual library of different buildings, of nature, of rooms, of learning that skill of perspective and ways to create settings that have character so that you're able to tell the story and the vibe without any sort of words or descriptions, simply from looking at the setting. These are all skills that actually many different types of artists can benefit from. But by looking at other people who are already doing it and are already in the professional scene and have been in the professional scene for a long time, you can kind of glean what it is that you can work on. And doing this, especially when I was still trying to figure it out, because I was someone who did not know what I wanted to do as far as art as my career for a very long time. And being directionless is probably the hardest thing that an artist can do in my experience. And so it can feel very overwhelming immediately. And that can feel really unmotivating. It can be very disheartening. And then you end up kind of having the paralysis of like, oh, there's so much that I need to improve on and there's so much I need to do. So should I even bother doing it because I'm so behind? And I think, unfortunately, an artist's job is to continuously fight back against that dreaded feeling. My advice is definitely advice that you will hear everywhere, which is that the best way to tackle a big task or a large goal is by cutting it down into smaller pieces. So same thing, be more specific about what you want to get better at, where you want to get better at, and then from there you can look at ways to get better at those things. We have definitely benefited from this digital age where many people are putting out tutorials either via Patreons where you can pay a little bit every month, or there are plenty of free tutorials out there as well. There are many artists out there who just enjoy being in a mentor position and love showing their process and answering questions. So there's definitely a lot to benefit from out there. You could even look into in-person things if that interests you. I know our local colleges have adult workshops, so they will teach you introduction to painting and things like that, if of course you are able to do that financially. But it is good, I think, to try and get into in-person experiences periodically if you can, because it does make a difference versus finding things online. And I think another really great resource is, if you can, just connect to other artists. Talk to other people. It really helps if they're in a similar skill set as you. So then there's a sense of camaraderie and less so much a sense of comparing yourself to each other. And then the biggest way that you can really improve beyond your limits, I guess, is through other artists by discussing each other's art and some friendly critiquing. Being critiqued can be pretty scary. It obviously is your flaws being pointed out and ways that you can improve, but that's also the best thing about it, is that someone who hasn't been staring at this canvas or this iPad screen for hours and hours can look at it from a much more objective third-person view and be like, oh, hey, this angle of this arm looks a little awkward. And then you then will be able to step back and be like, oh yeah, it does look a little unnatural. And you never would have noticed because you've just been so stuck and so up close to it. So hearing other people's critiques can really help you to zoom out and look at your art in a more rounded and bigger picture kind of way, which I think is great for your confidence as an artist as well. Being able to really back up and see, okay, yeah, I could definitely improve on these things, but I can see that in these other ways, this piece is way better compared to my last one, and that feeling is so exciting. Those are just my general thoughts on improving technical skill-wise. If you want me to talk further about it, please definitely let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to talk more about this or that, or if you have certain questions, please let me know. Now, moving on to a more philosophical discussion of being a better artist, because you'll note in my title, it's about being a better and happier artist, which I would say is actually more important than being a better artist. There are two ways that my art has personally grown exponentially. The first, I kind of mentioned, the 365 challenge, is essentially an example of consistent effort. Consistent effort has been a huge benefit to my art and to my confidence as an artist. The other way that I have grown is simply having fun, which in this harsh world, it's really difficult to have fun right now without feeling some sort of guilt. But I promise you that when you start prioritizing your joy as an artist, the pieces will start to fall together sooner than if you're obsessing over being better than this artist or feeling worthy of being next to this other artist. And those two things don't have to be either or. If you're someone who's in therapy, something that therapists often say is that two opposite things can be true at the same time. So we can do hard work, put in the effort and the study, and we can also be having fun at the same time. So the way that I implement this is that for the most part, I'm making pieces because I want to make them. I don't have a lot of consistent client work. So client work is separate from this. This is work that I'm doing to either build my portfolio, or I'm doing it to add into my store, or sometimes I just want to make it. So I find a balance in doing fun pieces, but even if they're fun pieces, I keep in mind at least one technical skill point that I want to try and improve in this piece. So if I'm doing a full illustration, something I'm going to try to be more attentive of is the background. I'm not so great at backgrounds, so let me try and put a little bit more effort and a little bit more care than I usually do. Let me find more references, do some more studies, and that can be the quote-unquote work part of it, and then everything else can be the fun part of it. So then by the end, not only do I have a piece that I made because I wanted to make it, but I can also feel proud that I worked towards my goal of being better at XYZ skill. What has helped me a lot as well is finding joy in doing things that scare me. So I make a lot of anime fan art, and I've been someone who has enjoyed anime since a young age, but it actually took me up until my mid-20s to actually do really any fan art. Reason being, it always kind of scared me, which is typically the opposite of what other people experience. The fan art is easy to them because it's like, this thing already exists, it's already designed, so I just need to put my own spin on it. And the original art is maybe a little bit harder because you have to put more thought into it and a little more process is involved. But fan art kind of scared me because anime is something so ingrained in my life that I felt this sort of pressure to quote unquote do it right. So a couple years ago, I decided I was just going to jump in. I also, at that time, was an artist who was definitely more semi-realistic, leaning a bit more on the realistic. So I wasn't quite sure how successful I was going to be at adapting into a more loose, fun style like I've kind of always wanted. So doing anime fan art was going to very much be a growth exercise for me. So I kind of jumped into it. My first pieces, not great. They were on my store for a bit, and they are no longer on my store. But I'm really glad that I did it because I've hit a point now where my illustration has hit strides that I had never really considered. And that's very exciting because it wasn't even something that I imagined. And that's where the experimentation can be really fun because you can plan and plan all you want. But when you start doing things that are outside of your comfort zone, you find a lot of frustration, but then also a lot of fulfillment. I think another huge part of being an artist is work-life balance. People, we need boundaries. The classic, so relatable reels and TikToks out there are always of artists staying up until 6 a.m. doing art. They haven't drank any water. They had one nugget for a meal since 12 hours ago. And it's all like tee-hee funny until you're dealing with the consequences of living like that, if you can call that living. Now, I'm saying all that. I am genetically a workaholic. It's just in my blood. I got it from my dad, unfortunately, and it's just who I am. So I graduated college in 2020, so things had just shut down. I was fresh out of college, and at that time I had a very part-time job, but I was essentially doing art full-time, and let me tell you, I was so miserable. At that time, I was very strict on myself because I felt a huge burden to get on my feet as soon as possible. Financially, emotionally, just trying to prove myself, and also bills need to be paid. If I had family things on the weekend, I would do those family things and I would jump right back into work, and the family things aren't really days off, so commonly I would have had one day off in a month sometimes. And I worked 8-hour days because that's what we've all been raised on, and I would sometimes get a lot of work done. But most commonly what would happen is I crashed and burned. I would get so burnt out. So I would make like a ton of pieces in a short period of time. I'd be doing so much work that I didn't even really stop to think if I was enjoying the work or not. And then I would get burnt out, and then I wouldn't do any work at all for 2 months because I was just so depressed. And of course, I didn't want to do the work, so I didn't do it. But then I felt really bad that I wasn't doing any work because I need to be working harder in order to make something of myself. And it was just a really bad, toxic cycle of working, just to crash and burn. So something that is just as important as finding what good art means to you is finding the pace that works for you. Eventually, when I decided that I really needed to set better boundaries and set more healthy work-life balance, I ditched the 8-hour shift and I opted for a healthier 6-hour one with an 1-hour break in the middle. And I set it so that weekends were just days off, period. I wasn't doing any work, and if I had family things, then I would let myself have a weekday off afterwards. I became very serious about having that time off. I felt really bad about that at the beginning because I was cutting down significantly on how much time I was putting into my work. But guess what happened? I became much more efficient, and because I had better boundaries, then I wasn't going into the workday dragging my feet, feeling like, oh my God, like another day, I have to do another drawing. Of course, that does still happen sometimes, but much less, and when it does, I can push through without there being consequences of a complete crash and burn. Nowadays, I'm lucky to have a part-time job that offers me stable income that I don't hate. In fact, in some ways, I like it. So now I actually only work on my art job 3 hours a day. So I've cut even further the amount of work I put into my career. And what has happened is having this day job has essentially forced me into a more regular schedule, which is really great for a night owl who, when given the opportunity, will stay up until 2 a.m. and then sleep in until noon. And that's fine and dandy for maybe the first week, but it's really not conducive to a productive work week. What also is great is that because I have steady income from this job, I feel a lot more comfortable, and there's significantly less pressure on me to succeed in my art job, which helps it to make it fun. Artist career, it is a job. There are definitely many things that you have to do that you don't expect to have to do. That's not so great. But taking out the piece of, I need this product to do well, because if I don't, then I can't pay for rent. Having that piece removed, if you can, is huge for the mental load that an artist has. Because before, when I had no boundaries, this very much was a 24/7 job. Even when I wasn't drawing or I wasn't doing admin things, I was checking Instagram, I was preparing posts, I was watching videos about how to market better and how to get more followers on Instagram. I was thinking about work all the time. For 2+ years now, I've been doing only 3 hours of my art job a day, and I've never been happier in my career, even though I don't make significantly more than I used to. And I'm also making some of the best work I've ever made. I had a really good year. 2023 was an amazing year for me compared to my other years because I had booked the most client work I had ever booked in a single year. And the harsh truth is that even after getting all that client work, you're not going to truly feel happy if you are treating yourself like garbage. I had all that work, and of course I was happy and I was overwhelmed. It was a very stressful time, and because I didn't have the guardrails in place to make sure that I was getting the work done without sacrificing my well-being, I felt taken out of it because of how tired and stressed out I was. The other thing is that when you're a freelancer, this is a very unstable job. So success one month doesn't guarantee success the next month. And when I had my best year of client work in 2023, it was followed by my worst year of client work. So talk about, again, being raised up in a crash and burn. And this really affected my confidence as an artist. I was feeling extremely lost when years before I was feeling much more motivated and ready to put the hard work in. But after accomplishing some of my goals and feeling like I was starting to get where I wanted to be. And then kind of losing that the next year, it really made me question a lot of things. And if I was taking better care of myself outside of this career, it wouldn't have been as hard of a hit on my confidence. The more things you accomplish, there tends to be a cycle of higher and higher expectations. And so if and when those expectations aren't met, what do you have to fall back on? And that leads to my final thing that I think really is important for an artist, is to find the balance in the hard but necessary work along with the fun and fulfilling work. It's really important to find what amount works for you of being really hardworking and passionate about your career and making this work out, as well as passion for yourself and for what fills your cup outside of art. What a lot of artists have is just a spark to create. So if your art right now isn't fulfilling you, and it's not in a position to fulfill you for whatever reason at this point in time, you can find that spark in other places. It's actually even easier to find that spark in other places when they aren't tied to your livelihood. For example, I dabble a little bit in embroidery. I like to sew, so I learned how to sew my own neckties and my own hair bows. I have a lot of little crafts like puzzles and stickers that use my hands as well and help, like I said, fill my cup, help me feel fulfilled in a way that's detached from my art, because my art has so much more weighing on it that makes it feel quote unquote valuable. What has made me feel much more confident as an artist, even when I'm getting rejection after rejection and maybe things aren't turning out that great, even though I tried really hard on this, or I attempted to do that and it didn't work out, is building confidence outside of my life as an artist. If you feel more secure in yourself, away from your identity as an artist, you wouldn't expect it to, but it can help you feel more secure in what is a very unstable career. And again, I think something that is really amazing is connecting with other people who are going through the same things as you. It's one thing to vent to a friend who is a great listener and for them to kind of sympathize, but it feels very different to talk to someone else who knows exactly the feeling you're talking about and they can empathize. That's a big reason as to why I started making these videos. I'm an artist who is happy in where I'm at and hopefully where I'll be going, but of course there are a lot of ways that I can improve, and I would love to just connect with more people and just talk about how crazy difficult it is to try and do this career, especially right now when the market is so saturated and we have AI working against us and big corporations devaluing our work. So definitely give me a follow if you're on Instagram, Tumblr, or Threads. I am at Cindy Tran Art on all of them. And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe for more content, and comment down below things that have helped you to be a better and happier artist. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely day, and until next time.